been rented for a year.
River bandits.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know he did it to begin with.
Call to order this meeting of the Muscatine City Council, June 14th, 2016. Fran, will you please take the roll call?
Councilmembers Raywalt.
Present.
Fitzgerald.
Present.
Nattig.
Present.
Saucedo.
Present.
Bynum.
Present.
Harvey.
Present.
Spread.
Present.
All present, Your Honor.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Oh, thank you, Greg. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. We appreciate you being with us, and we're going to move right on. This is an in-depth meeting of the City Council, so we won't have regular things in our sessions tonight. We'll move right on to our first item, which is request to approve Quiet Zone Funding Agreement. And who will be addressing that?
Dave?
Dave?
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. What we have before us is basically a funding agreement. That's really all it is at this stage, to fund two different studies to determine what the steps are that's going to be needed in order to make a quiet zone happen from the Mad Creek crossing, which is a pedestrian crossing, down to the Hershey Ave lift station, which is down just before the McKee Button building. And what happens is that the horns stop blowing quarter of a mile further than both of those crossings. That's the study. We need to have it funded. We have a party that's interested in funding that in the interest of the city, basically the downtown residents. It benefits some businesses. There's a number of things that a quiet zone actually does do for the city. So anyway, that is something that we talked about doing for many months, if not a year or better, that we want to do, this council and previous members. This is our first big step in moving towards getting it implemented or discussed and understood. Because there are federal and state requirements that need to be addressed, so we want to make sure. And that we have safe crossings for pedestrians as well as vehicles.
Dave, typically what needs to be done in order to qualify for a quiet zone, as far as crossings are concerned?
Well, you have equipment such as they call them quad gates, where there are gates on both sides of the tracks instead of just arms. An arm on this side of this particular lane and an arm on this lane. There are those types of things. There's some signal upgrades that need to happen in those boxes that they have, those signal boxes. It could be up to those things, as well as a lot more additional signage. There is the declaration by the council or by the city, I'll just say it that way, to designate that as a quiet zone. So there's several steps that probably will take place as a result of these studies. And let the studies kind of tell us the instruction manual of how to do it. That's the whole point.
Do the pedestrian crossings need like gates too?
Yes,
They do, okay.
they'll need gates, unless there's some other thing that it comes out of the study that says it needs something different.
Thank you.
How long will this take?
No more than 18 months, not the studies, but the whole overall project. It will take about 18 months.
But the study?
The study
will
should be
determine-
3-4 months, maybe.
Okay. And will we compare other cities? Will we compare other cities as far as when you start coming up with the numbers as far as what's been proven and effects that are done well?
Well, actually, we're going to be picking the consultants that have done this many times before, which will weigh into it.
In
The
your
uniqueness
presentation.
of Muscatine as to the overall requirements. We have actually six crossings technically there. So it has some uniqueness, but it also will compare to the regs as to what's needed. I don't know whether or not it makes a difference whether it's compared with another city or not, but
If you've had good effects or if you've had good, you know,
that's the key. You got to find out the consultants that have done this successfully many times.
yeah.
And that's part of our RFP process, what we would be doing.
Safety is the number one thing.
Well, yeah, and I mentioned that.
That's the one thing that I'm concerned about, just making sure that we recognize that, and it's not just in the best interest of, you know, one incident makes it all for nothing.
We're on the same page. We're on the same page. We represent the city in making sure that we have quiet, safe crossings.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
It's not only downtown, it's East Hill and West Hill. It just blasts people out of their beds.
Well, I live on 3rd Street, and there are a number of people, number of residents that not even here tonight that would benefit clearly from this. And I don't know how many times I've heard, you can tell when an engineer is angry for being on that shift because we hear it differently. Different trains are a little softer and some are just, they'll hold on to that horn all the way through
Unstop, yeah.
at 2 in the morning.
Well, apparently others are doing it safely or have been.
Oh, yes, yes. This is about, in the United States, I understand there are about 600 safe, quiet zones.
Thousands of places in Europe are like this.
Yeah, it's not, I'm just talking about domestically. So it's relatively not that, when you think about all the crossings across the United States, only 600 of them are quiet zones. Interesting.
Thank you very much, Dave.
You're
We
welcome.
appreciate it.
Any other questions? I
Do
guess
we
not.
need a motion? I'll
Yes.
also move that we approve the request to fund the study.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Moving on to number 3. Review of recommendation by the Chamber Commercial Dumpster Committee. Is that you, Greg? Thank you.
Evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Greg Jenkins with the Greater Muscatine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In May of this year, at an in-depth session, it was presented to you the issue with rates that are being charged for commercial waste dumpster service across the community. That represented a shortage of about $63,000 between what's being collected and what needs to be collected based on a study done by city staff to ascertain what the actual costs were for those services, for the specific services for the dumpsters and the like. Coming out of that, it was agreed that the Chamber would form a committee that would take a look at this. We have met twice, and at the first session, we received the same review that the council did. And we, at that time, the rate card that was presented was just asked if we couldn't take a look at that and whether or not there was a way to soften the blow. It was some of the folks who will be seeing an increase to their rates will see a very significant increase to their rates for commercial waste for their dumpster services. Now, granted, and the committee realizes that it has been an interesting dynamic that gets us to where we are today, and it's been a long time coming, and the rates that they've been getting to date have been good, have been very good for them, and we recognize in the committee that a change needs to take place. And so the committee, the city came back with a second proposal that was approximately 80% of the initial rate card that was proposed, and that's what we're asking that you guys consider in the session when it gets called to take on. And so Nancy can help with the numbers probably far better than I can if there's any reason to do that, but we think the committee, we had good representation from the downtown as well as other businesses who participated in the committee, and everybody agreed that we should move forward with the rate card proposed by the city with the second round.
Did you get a feel for the percentage of buy-in for this rate structure from the various commercial accounts?
We did not.
Talk to him yet.
You haven't talked to them yet? Okay.
I was a part of that committee process. The 80% number, effectively what it does is it covers our direct costs. It does not cover our indirect costs for this line of business, okay? But it's meant to be a negotiated effort to soften the blow for those folks that are affected, because some of them are going to see some pretty significant increases, no question. So that's really what we're trying to come to, is something that both sides could live with. A big part of this process, you don't just pass out the card and say, here's your new bill. A big part of this is to contact every one of those users. We know that on average, those dumpsters are half full. So it's a conversation with each client and saying, how can we right-size your container? So there's gonna be some movement in terms of the size of the container that you might have based on your needs. So this is an estimate. This isn't, and it's the best you can do with it. Yeah.
This is good for how long?
We believe that we need to come back in about a year and take another look at it and see where we are at that time, and stay on top of reviewing these rates and seeing how we're doing.
There's actually, part of the report says that there are businesses that it was difficult for them to get to recycle bins, or?
Yeah, and the city has agreed to take a look at and probably make available additional recycling capabilities within the downtown. There's a lot of cardboard that's reported, that a lot of cardboard goes in, and that's extra weight that goes, that goes into our landfill, and it ought to be recycled. So if there's a way that we could recycle more of that, that would help with the waste tonnage that goes. And also enables people to more likely right-size their dumpsters. How many of them are using dumpsters now when they could be using a cart? That's things we need to learn. Mm-hmm. The city's agreed to do this, make a 60 to 90-day notice of what's about to take place, and that'll be a time where Laura Legis and her crew can talk to people about what they've got in place now, and is that what makes the most sense?
I would ask the council to hold a concurrence in abeyance for a week. We've been at this for about a year, and it started with some bogus numbers that were supplied us that were finally, Nancy's department did a stellar job of actually figuring out what our true costs are, and I'll have a comprehensive motion to offer next week about this. I have not done a scientific survey of this, but the 9 places I did survey, commercial haulers can do it a heck of a lot cheaper than we can. And we're doing them I would just ask we wait a week.
But I don't think we're asking to approve anything tonight anyway. This is just a review.
Asked for, I thought. I want to thank the committee for doing all of what you've done.
And I think we would be open to continuing conversations with how we might do the best thing for the community and for those. I mean, there are a lot of dumpsters out there. We did not see the list of who those dumpsters were in order to do a survey, but I think there are some that we need to be sure that we don't do things to those folks who that wasn't intended. And so with that, let's continue to talk and we can move forward.
Greg, you mentioned about right sizing. How did we work with some of the owners, or did your committee talk to?
We did talk to.
There
are a couple of businesses on the committee that have those dumpsters, and they were the ones that brought up the idea that they're throwing a lot of cardboard in those dumpsters because they don't like to do that, but they don't have the wherewithal to get that cardboard down to the landfill or transfer station, to get it recycled accordingly, so it ends up there and going into the landfill. And so if they could get that process stopped or corrected, they wouldn't possibly they wouldn't need such a large dumpster, and their rates wouldn't go up so significantly.
It seems like there's a, Republic is now doing the dumpster cardboard down there at the transfer station. Since they are our recycling vendor, I'm wondering if we can twist them a little bit to put a couple other locations. We have, I think Mr. Axel is still providing a dumpster down in one of the city parking lots, what used to be First National Bank. He had threatened to pull it out, but they discussed it with him, and I think it's still there now.
ESI
He's
has
got a
2 in the
second one.
downtown.
2 of them downtown.
So, trying to bring in some additional dumpsters. They make money on the cardboard. So, but not having them available to where it makes it easier for them to get them there is tough. If I do a project, then I end up with a whole kitchen cabinet set of cardboard. I mean, it's not going to fit in my little rollout thing I roll out to the street, so I end up carting it down to the south end, and we used to have it at Hy-Vee, we had one at Walmart, we had, numerous locations, and so you could take your pick. We need to get back to where that could be available again for somebody that's got larger than just a couple boxes.
And Laura Legis was open to taking a look at that and working with us to make that happen. I would also like to suggest that, or mention that the gentleman who spoke at the committee that has the dumpster in place likes the service, likes having the consistency that Muscatine's waste refuse collection gives them, doesn't have to worry about it, likes the convenience of having it in the bill the way that it is. So I think there's a line there that eventually will cross where it's more expensive regardless of that service, but at the moment we really count on that service from the community, and we value that and are prepared to pay a little bit more for it because it is something it's good service, and they recognize that.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you. I want to. Tom and Bill Trent are here tonight. They were on the committee, and I want to thank them for participating, and the others as well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Bill. Tom?
Moving on to number 4 on our agenda, Creekside Development Project TIF request. Please come on up.
Hello, my name is Chris Ailes. Some of you may recall that I was before you about a year ago pursuing financing for this project. We submitted an application to the Iowa Finance Authority last December. It's a fairly competitive application. We did not receive our funding, and we'd like to reapply this year. I suppose before I go into any detail on the needs for that reapplication, it might be helpful to give you an overview of the project, to kind of refresh your memories. It is a 48-unit, 24 duplexes set aside for senior housing, age 55 and over. The location, rather than me fumble through trying to describe it, I'll just hand this to you, Tom. And if you could each take one and just pass it on. It's out off of Hauser Street, just back behind Crossroads. I believe our attorney has provided some drawings that would be consistent with what we had proposed last year in duplex design with attached garages. The financing that we pursued through the State Finance Authority is a very competitive program. There were 31 applications submitted last year. Of those 31, about 9 of them were thrown out for failing their underwriting criteria. That left, I believe, about 22 that were scored. Of those 22, they funded 11. So you can look at it as maybe 1 out of 3, at best, 50% chance of securing the funding. We had sent some information through Greg requesting tax increment financing this year for our project, in addition to the project-based vouchers that you had approved last year. The importance of that tax increment financing, I guess, is best set out in an example. The lowest score that was approved last year was 206 points. Our score was 196 points. If we had had TIF, we would have had an additional 21 points. So 217 gets us up in the hunt, so to speak. Bottom line, TIF is an effective tool at leveraging these low-income housing tax credits into the community. It's about a $9 million project. The financing that we'd be pursuing through the state, leveraging with the use of both the vouchers and the TIF, is a little over $7 million. So it's a substantial commitment from the state, but they like to see a commitment from the local community.
So the,
Go ahead.
7.8 million from the state then, in essence?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And out of the 9.4 million, who's making up the difference?
There's a conventional mortgage on the property,
Okay,
basically bank financing.
okay. And do you hold this for the life of the project, or do you sell it off?
Well, there's with these projects, there's a 15-year land use restrictive agreement that's frequently extended to 30 to score a few extra points. And that land use restrictive agreement restricts the occupancy to the seniors, and it also restricts the income and the rents of the property. My intention has always been to hold all my properties. I've developed a couple other properties here in town, and when the recession came along, I was not able to keep them. But to answer your question, our intention would be to hold them, barring any reason that might change that.
So this is very similar to the projects that's on the other side of Hauser across from Crossroads.
That is correct, and that is one that I developed.
Cottage Apartments or
Cottage
Cottage
Grove, yes,
Hill
sir.
or whatever it's called. Okay.
That's correct.
You've got some information in here regarding the need for such housing, maybe for the benefit of the citizens. You can, I mean, that are watching on TV, you can
Sure.
hit the highlights maybe.
Okay. Off the top of my head, I don't have that information in front of me right here, but we have commissioned a market study from a third party. That market study documents the need with the aging demographics across the country. It's hard to go to just about any community and there not be a need. But that said, we've gone to the effort of securing a third-party study that documents the need for the senior housing, taking into consideration the units that are across the road at Cottage Grove, and then also down at the Welch Hotel. One of the underwriting criteria that the State Finance Authority uses is the last thing they want to do is fund new developments in a community that will undermine existing developments that the state has already financed, and so they take that into consideration in their market studies.
And can you give us, a
ahead.
profile of the person that's qualified to live in a unit like this?
The age restrictions, 80% are required to be over 55. The other 20% we have elected to restrict that to age 50 and over. The typical the typical tenant is going to be somebody who's retired. They're on Social Security. They may have a modest pension. Their incomes are in the $25,000, $27,000, $28,000 range.
It's also a broader range than some of the other ones. As I was reading, it's not just the 30% of median income and below, it's up to, so it's a broader range? Is that
Yes. Again, one of the scoring criteria in the application kind of pushes us towards setting aside a few units at 30% of the area median income, a few units at, I believe it's 40% of the area median income, may even be a few at 50, and then a number of them, the bulk of them, are at 60% of the area median income. And then there would be a handful at market rate as well. So yes, it's a wide range of incomes in the units.
Do we normally do 12 years?
Normally, as I guess
I thought we did 10 years.
We've done one of these in recent history. The Harrison Street loss, which we have a draft agreement that'll be coming forward to council. That was also at 7% of development cost, but it was a 10-year, 50% TIF at $650,000 max for that agreement. So that's the first one similar to this that we've done, and that was done last year. They were awarded the housing tax credits and vouchers as well.
So we've never done one this big?
We've
This
done
long, I
one.
should say.
We've done one. From a housing perspective, we participated, we had a TIF with MCC, the developer for the student apartments. That's a little bit different project. But in recent history, we've just done the one Harrison Street Lost project, which was 10 years, 50%, 7% of development cost, $650,000. They're asking for 7%, but in order to get there, that would take 12 years. So. And then the other difference for this agreement is there is no TIF district in place in this location. So as part of the process, the council would have to institute or create a TIF district in addition to a development agreement and a TIF agreement and adding it to the urban renewal plan, which is one of the newer requirements that everything that we pretty much do with TIF has to be included in the urban renewal plan.
Would you build this if you didn't get the TIF?
No. No, we tried last year, and I think you made a good point. Our competition received the project-based vouchers. We received similar amount of project-based vouchers, and those are scored. And they received TIF, and we did not. They were funded, and we were not.
It's perverse, isn't it?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion? We're not looking for any answer tonight, right?
Just a general
You wanna-
consensus, if there's a consensus to move forward, so Mr. Ailes knows whether or not to proceed at a later date, we would come back with a motion for council to support the tax credit application, which would include TIF and may include vouchers as well.
So what are the vouchers? The vouchers
Section 8.
actually don't cost us anything. Those are Section 8.
No, if you,
Correct.
Jody's here tonight as well, but we would have to again go through the RFP process. I believe that the Harrison Street project was awarded 12 to 13 vouchers. The remainder of the vouchers obviously were not awarded because the second project was not awarded
Right.
tax credits, so there would still be available vouchers out there, but we would have to go through the formal RFP process to do so.
Okay.
Would staff recommend that we go to the next step?
I guess the question for us is do you want to be consistent in your application of TIF at the 10 years, the 50%? Or are you looking more at the dollars and cents amount of the project, which is relatively close at the 12 years? Both developers have asked for 7% of the development cost. So it's really kind of are you looking to set a standard going forward on what the city will do, or is it really individual based on the project? So it's really kind of the question that's out there.
It makes sense for it to mirror what we've already done and at least set a standard in some way.
On the dollar amount?
I'm talking about.
Or on years?
The 10 years, the 50%, the 7%. No.
7% of the project, but 50% of the TIF for 10 years.
Yeah.
And 50% of the TIF for 10 years, you have the authority to do that
Bring
without,
that forward, correct?
without council.
50% 10 years will not get you to 7% of the development cost, though. That just to be clear.
And that's what
you
he's
need-
saying that he
you
needs
need-
for the.
He needs
for
the
to
7.
You
get
need
that
at least the
point.
12 years is what they're asking for in here. So I guess it depends on what if you're looking to maximize the application, you need 7% of the development cost in order to do that. So is that the target, or is the basic TIF agreement, the 10-year 50%, is that the target that we put out there as for these types of projects? That's really kind of the question.
So just to refresh my memory, how did the other so-called competitor get the funding that you did not get? Why did we give him the funding to that TIF for that
Yes,
other
so
group?
we had a presentation
Okay.
for the program.
And was it
I-
50%?
It was 10 years, 50%,
But it was also 7%
that'll-
of the project?
7% of the development cost, 10 years, but at 10 years and 50%. So it's really going to depend on the project,
Yeah.
you know, how quickly you get there, what it ends up being assessed at, what your minimum assessed value is, how quickly you get to that project cost. I think that, I guess diplomatic, the Harrison Street project was a little bit further along in the process, had their study done, and was a little bit further along in the process at that point in time, and had requested TIF. You're a little bit further along in the process now and back before council.
If I could interject here, I don't want to get hung up on the 10 or the 12 years. If 10 years is a comfort level for the city and the council, we can probably make our application work, just so that we all know that probably means instead of getting the extra 21 points, I'd have to run the math, we might get 19. Going back to last year's numbers, that would seem to have probably been enough.
Is re-engineering the project at a slightly lower level also an option for you?
Could you
No, I mean,
elaborate on
In
that?
other words, if it's not being 9 million, maybe you could run it, rerun your numbers and get some estimates down to 8 million.
So the 10 years at 50% would cover your 7%. I mean, somehow, some way to trim the overall project.
That's a possibility.
Sharpen the pencil.
Yeah.
I was a little bit concerned when I saw the 12-year request, but I have to balance that in my mind is what would our community gain from this? You know, could we justify it based on, we'd get more value out of this as a community than we're really giving up, so to speak, by going with a 12-year TIF, you know. So I'd like to maybe have some input on that as if whoever runs the numbers, you know, what do we get back?
We get homes. That's the one
Right.
thing.
You get homes in.
How do we put a value on that?
If you recall, so Dave and company have put together a draft RFP for our housing demand study that we have budgeted to do this year as well. And we'll certainly use the study that was done by Harrison Street, and we'll certainly ask to use the Creekside study to supplement that work and bring that back to council so that we have a better idea and better picture of Muscatine and our housing needs at the end of the day. And that's where I really think where you'll see the value in seeing what we need as a community and how these two projects fit into it. Their study will certainly take a look at their particular project and the needs. So we hope to be bringing that back here shortly. We have the draft RFP and looking forward to getting that out shortly.
I'd like to factor in that information at the same time and trying to balance whether it's 10 or 12 years or whatever the dollars are. You know.
Just don't know that I'll have that for you. We won't have that study done or complete in a timeline because the applications are due in November 1st.
4th, yes.
4th, right. So Nancy's run the numbers in 10
14th,
years.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so 10 years at it gets you around, 12 years, gets you around $663,000, or if you roll back that amount, it's about $597,000. So at the end of the day, it'll depend on what the agreed upon minimum assessed value is. I mean, that can get you to where you need to be at the end of the day. It's
Why did, if it's 7% of the project, the other one, and this one's 7%, the dollar amounts are basically the same. Why is it a bigger TIF?
No, the dollars, the assessed
build.
value, or the project, the dollar amount of
Assessed
the
value on
development
Harrison
cost.
Street was higher?
I'd have to go back and look at did I see a hand? But you'd have to go back and look at the assessed value. I mean, that's really what's going to drive the,
It's an
Right, the cost at
interesting
the end of the
issue
day.
because both projects are offering 50 units. One is a single building and the other is 25 duplexes, yet the assessed value comes in apparently lower on one than the other, you know?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's,
Yeah.
it just kind of,
Part of that would be impacted by the different elections that we might make in the application that restrict the incomes.
Sure.
That would drive the value.
okay. Is there any other points in the application that could be altered?
I've scoured the application.
I would imagine.
We put a lot of time. It's probably close to $50,000 out of pocket for us to submit one of these applications. And so we've scoured what they call the QAP, the Qualified Allocation Plan, the rules by which they award these points, and we're garnering every point we can. I spoke to Greg just a few minutes before the session here tonight started. The State Finance Authority issues new rules each year. Their new rules for this year were just published a couple of days ago. I received access to them a couple hours before tonight's session. I've looked through it. It will have some impact on our application, but it is not stopping us from continuing to move forward. One thought mulling through my mind is that we might fade, for a very complex reason I could explain perhaps at a later date, but we may phase the project into two 24-unit projects. But we could come back, if the TIF concept is of interest to you and you're open-minded, we could come back with those details after I've had time to look at the new rules in detail.
But if you phase the project, what do you?
You'd pretty much cut everything I've asked for today in half for simple math.
I'm just looking at your layout. How do you phase that progress or project?
We'd have to redesign the site.
Yeah, and then the clubhouse, what is with the what's the
We've added a community building
community building?
at just about all of our sites.
I just wanted to correct myself. I said 10 years, 50%. It's 10 years or 12 years, 100%. Sorry.
Yeah.
I just
That makes more sense.
Well, the other one,
Question.
was the Harrison Street 100% for 10?
100 for 10.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
that makes more sense.
Yeah, now it's, now we're real close.
Oh, that's what I thought. It was like, is that 18 million then for that one?
Yeah.
If you did 50%.
But prior to the Harrison Street, they've brought residential TIF projects to council and we've said no. And just obviously last year, we decided to do it. And this one, we actually had 3 that came forth. And one pulled their application and two others ran with it. One got funded, one of them didn't.
Yeah.
I guess the biggest thing is, do we as council think that we need apartments or housing for our seniors?
Yeah.
That's what I was going to, we keep in mind that projects like this benefit lower-income senior citizens. So I think doing something like that is a plus.
And it's a mixture of
Yeah,
incomes, and I think
it's
the
gonna
other one
cost-
that we approved last year was also a mixture, if I recall.
Yeah.
There is one distinction I'd point out. The project that we were competing with last year that did get funded is what we'd call a family project, and we're a senior project, and so they're serving different markets.
Yeah. Do you have you said you did a study, market
Yes,
study?
we've had an independent market study that was,
Do we have a copy of that?
I think,
Can we,
did Chuck send you a few excerpts from that?
can we get
If not, I'll be happy to give you the
If we could
full
just get-
study.
if we could just
Yes.
get a copy of the
executive
study.
summary, or just give us a copy of it, or what?
I'll give you the entire study, and you can take whatever portion. There's an executive summary there that you can just
That's good.
jump to.
Interesting reading.
So we just have to have a consensus that we're wanting to hear more
Yeah,
about it?
if you're interested in moving forward, the next, he's got some homework to do. He will, or Creekside will need a motion to support the tax credit application, and including the TIF, and with a few details to work out. I mean, if those are 2 items that the council is,
We'll need that at some
comfortable
point.
with, we'll need to bring that back to council prior to the November 4th submittal date in advance of.
I clarified it's the
14th?
14th, yes.
Well, I'd like to hear more information. I mean, we can get that information, so I'm okay with that as far as
Certainly.
my.
The other thing,
I am too. More information, the better.
the local, just one other comment, the local economy. I had a resident that I was talking with earlier about doing some projects at her house, and she said if she had an opportunity to go into like the Cottage Grove Apartments, sell this sucker, I'm moving and not doing any work. And I told her about this development that was possibly, it was in getting scored, obviously, and didn't make it, but she was excited about doing something like this. And what that does is then put a 3-bedroom home on the market to other families can get into. So I think the economy turns over a couple times when you do these projects. So I'm in favor of bringing this back.
Bob?
Yes.
Tom?
Yep.
Yes.
Scott? Yep. Sounds like we have consensus.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on to the last thing on our agenda, update on the Mississippi Drive Corridor Project. Thank you for your patience.
Good evening. My name is Jim Harbaugh with Bolton & Mink. I'm a project manager on the Mississippi Drive project. Have a lot of slides in the packets tonight, but a lot of you have seen them already. Our goal is not to bore you to death ad nauseum with all the information, but more so to give you an update on the project, to answer some questions that were posed at the public meetings, to ask for some input from you as council on some of the design elements, some of these major decision things that we have to make, and then also to share some of the community results with you as well.
Is this the same presentation you gave at the Riverview Center a few weeks ago?
It's modified. It has a lot of the same slides, but we have some additional information. So
We're all there.
Yep. So I'm going to buzz through them as quick as I can here and really hit on the meat of the matter.
No clickers tonight, huh?
No clickers tonight.
Good deal.
I'm going to count hands. Hopefully less technical issues this time too. So where we're at, we're going to review our progress today again, and I think you all have seen this before. We are at the preliminary design stage. We're just wrapping that up, and we're really stepping into that next final design portion of the project, and that's why we want to get some feedback from you tonight on the project and some of the project elements in preparation of going into that final design portion of the project and really looking at bid letting or a bid opening in January or February of 2017 to keep that construction process going. You've seen the team before, so I won't bore you with that. One of the things that I just want to emphasize on here in the scope of work is in the project elements is that this is a financial partnership between the city, the Canadian Pacific, and MPW, and I will have a little bit of a breakout on that a little bit later, just to show you the magnitude of what all those partners add up to as far as the project. Our project goal is ultimately to implement a community-supported project and a technically sound project, and that's why we've gone through a lot of hoops right so far, both on the technical side of things and looking at traffic studies, both on the people side but also car side, of course, but also getting as much community feedback as we can through public meetings, through websites, through polling, that sort of thing. As we dissect the corridor, there are 4 different elements or 4 different characters, if you will, throughout the whole corridor. So we're looking at it as 4 different pieces, all without, we might use that kit of parts in the aesthetics of all of them, but they are a little bit different character as we're going through it. So what's been happening so far? Well, we're finalizing the corridor, that vertical roadway alignment, and have been working with MPW and the railway on what those ultimate up and down elevations are going to be and how that impacts things, especially through the downtown area. We're doing a lot of coordination with utility design. In fact, we're meeting with MPW tomorrow again to go through the traffic signals and street lighting and all those kind of elements as well. A lot of coordination on this project because we do have a lot of players and a lot of impacts for everybody. You've had a start to look for some of the concept designs for the streetscape elements, you know, I always call it the icing on the cake of projects, the aesthetic portion of it. One of the important things the city has charged us with is to really take a hard look at the staging of this project, because we know that this is going to be a hassle during construction, and we want to minimize that hassle as much as possible. So even before we've gotten into final design, we're looking at that staging and phasing plan to make sure that we can get people around the project and through the project with the least amount of impact. One of those components is the making second a two-way as part of it, which really helps our staging portion of the project. And in our traffic study, looked like it was a very good opportunity for the community to either do temporary or permanent for second. So that's one of the results so far. We're looking at a 3-lane section throughout everything with a 25-mile-an-hour posted speed limit, with a travel lane in each direction and center left turn lanes where we have roadways. That median in the middle is going to vary based on the amount of right-of-way that we have, the amount of land that we can work with. We are looking at surmountable curbs in most strips, a concrete piece behind the back of curb in those medians to make sure that we have EMS access to be able to get around. And we also have the concept of back-end angled parking on the north side of the roadway throughout the downtown area.
So I'm going to throw this out real quick.
Sure.
Can we modify that backing then, or is that already a done deal?
It's not a done deal, and certainly like to hear impact or input from you tonight.
Okay.
So.
I don't like it. Go ahead, though.
Did you
So-
go look at one?
So just so you know, we did look at multiple different ways to do parking on the Mississippi Drive corridor. We looked at straight-in parking, we looked at straight-in angled parking, we looked at parallel parking on both sides, and really got down and vetted to the back and angled parking for maximizing the number of spaces that we can, and also a safety factor on that versus the straight-in parking.
As he said, it's the first half of parallel parking.
It's the first half of parallel parking, yes. The first movement. And one of the other questions is always asked, are the stalls wider? Yes, they are. Gives us some wiggle room for backing in.
Just thinking before we paint the lines, we just do a little trial or something.
Sure, yep.
I'm just thinking it just,
In other communities, we've done that, and we've also done that for bump out areas at intersections to help people understand that we're sizing this for big truck traffic to make sure people can internet.
I think if it was a safe thing, I would just see it in the parking malls or in the other locations. I just not accustomed to it, so maybe it is in other locations successful.
Yeah.
But it is going to be different for us here in Muscatine.
Oh, definitely. It's a new concept. One of the biggest areas that I have seen it used in Iowa right now is in downtown Des Moines, East Village, and all the bridges across the roadway. They're implementing more and more.
Just giving you my input.
Yep, I appreciate that.
Just because they
That's
did
what we're
it
here
in
for
Des
tonight.
We're going to say, well, this isn't Des Moines.
Sorry.
So these are just a couple cross sections of what those roadways might look like. That traffic going one lane in each direction with that either center turn lane or a median, depending on where we're at within the corridor. We really focus that downtown parking on the commerce side of the roadway, we'll say the building side of the roadway, to get people directly connected in. So some of the big things that we have design decision wise, and I would like to get some input from tonight, is some of the roundabout ideas. Carver Corner is one of them. We looked at multiple different alternatives. I think we went, 6 different alternatives, Joe, and then some iterations thereof. This is what the roundabout concept would look like at Carver Corner. That blue square at the top is a Whiteway Hotel, and that would be impacted as part of this because of the elevation change.
Impacted meaning, okay, let's say it.
It's a nice way of saying come down,
Yeah,
probably.
okay.
I do have one comment about your roundabout. Several months ago, Fourth Ward gathered well over 500 signatures. Of those signatures were, the very top of the signature sheet stated, "We do not want a roundabout in our ward."
Has that been presented, Bob, or do you have it? Or?
Yes, it has. The city has it in their possession. What's happening with that?
Well, that's definitely one thing
Getting
that,
about the 500
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are we negating the 500 people that have signed and said that they do not want this to happen?
I think that's something that council needs to consider, along with some of the alternatives that we're showing, as well as some of the community input that we had through the multiple meetings on it. And we're definitely not here to tell you that you must do a roundabout or you must do that. We're seeking opinion and thought from the council tonight on both this one and the one at Second and Mulberry.
Do you have the slide of just the sweep?
We do. I'm going to go through each of these, and I'll do it quick, but this is the roundabout concept. You know, some of the pros on it, it is a lower cost than a signalized intersection like some of the other concepts. It is for more free-flowing traffic than having to stop and then cross over to go south. And it also doesn't happen to provide a little bit better gateway to downtown area, more of an entryway with you, if you will. Cons are a different traffic flow than before. It's, you know, different is always difficult at first. And it does impact different properties than were originally planned in the environmental assessment. And we'll talk a little bit about the EA a little bit later. Here's another alternative that we looked at. We call this the big sweep, where we put a big radius through, and then Hershey Avenue tees into that with a signal at there.
Looks great compared to a roundabout.
Okay.
It looks great compared to a roundabout.
So pros to that, it is a more traditional design. It does have that free flow of traffic on Mississippi and Grandview. And it does impact the same property initially planned like in the EA. The cons are it does have a higher cost than putting the roundabout in.
Why would that be?
Primarily, it takes more property, it takes a little more pavement, and it has signals. And signals are a major cost of the intersections.
I know this isn't, your bailiwick maybe, but it's a mystery to me why there's enough computer power in here to go to the moon, but traffic signals require huge boxes and huge expense. Why is that?
Well, I think they're getting smarter every day, and smarter sometimes means a little more expensive. But they're
Stop and go?
well, they're interconnected, and they have either video or loop detection on it. So,
Could you also include a con on this one that the traffic doesn't flow?
Seems like a market opportunity.
You know, the traffic engineers say that the roundabout flows traffic more efficiently,
correct. This one,
yet that's not shown as a con on this one.
this one, the flow is better from the
Because it's a
Mississippi to.
sweep.
Yep. But
the next
the downfall is the Hershey Avenue traffic, a little bit less.
But what's the traffic count that uses, I mean, is it really warranted to use a roundabout for, 20 cars a day that use Hershey Avenue, or is it 300?
On Mississippi, on Green, it's about 10,000, 9,000 to 10,000.
10,000?
That use Green Street?
The Hershey to Green. Yep,
I'm sorry.
They're passing them.
Oh, on the sweep?
correct.
Okay, but Hershey cutting, going back to the west.
The T and. Yeah,
Use
I think
Green
about-
Street going up the hill.
That'd be even less.
I mean, that's,
Yeah, that's gotta be less.
Where Hershey comes into that sweep.
so I can understand the sweep and having 14,000 or whatever, but accessing Green Street coming up or going down that would intersect with Hershey Avenue, I can't imagine people wanting to go there. And I do it occasionally just because I want to go up there and see what's at the top. But then Hershey Avenue, right now, coming through, it's almost a straight shot.
Correct.
Current existing layout. But I don't see a lot of traffic flow.
That's
I
an
just
excellent
wondered how
segue. I'm going to show you one more.
Okay.
Well, on that sweep, I don't know what the traffic is on Hershey, but it seems like instead of a traffic signal, you could just have a stop sign there. Because they can see both directions really well and coming, entering the sweep from Hershey. I don't know if a traffic light would be necessary.
Thoughts, Joe?
I just keep going back to like 8th Street and Cedar here in town, four-way stop with stop signs. It handles a heck of a lot of traffic. I don't know what the counts are, but we've never had anybody shot at because they, run out in front of somebody, road rage, nothing. It just flows well. And there's no big flashy lights.
So you're looking at potential of the sweep alternative, but without signalization.
Yeah.
Okay. and that's something that we can look at.
Just a stop sign.
Are these alternatives being looked at because it's all gonna be ripped up due to sewer and new water and all that stuff?
That's already been done.
That's already been done?
See,
down
that's
there?
what I was concerned
See
about.
the-
Isn't this one already part of it?
Fresh.
If you look at the dissecting the corridor, we had Carver Corner, Bluff-Residential, downtown, and HNI. Well, the Bluff-Residential down to Carver Corner is all brand-new concrete.
That's why we didn't know if it
Because
was
we
going to be
did
the
it
same
already.
cost.
5 years old or whatever.
Well, 3 to, yeah.
Yeah.
We did a sewer
The
project.
intersection itself has not been done yet for utilities and pavement.
Say again?
Correct.
East of it has been.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I mean, but it's real close, I think.
How far has the water and sewer been done on that corner? Down to what?
As from the intersection, probably,
Not in the intersection, he just said.
Just not in the intersection,
So that has to be ripped up.
Yeah.
because I think it went past the Kelly Heating and Air Conditioning place, down further past where the Maid-Rite used to be, that is now the Guy in a Grill.
Yeah.
That's all new.
I think one of our concerns, other than just general frugality, which is not a bad idea, is we want to spend a lot of money purchasing properties and doing other things on that corridor farther down. That if we can keep the bells and whistles to a minimum, that would be nice.
so Andrew just informed me that traffic counts on Hershey going westbound from that intersection is about 1,500 a day. And on Green going north up the hill is about 350. So very minimal going up the hill for sure.
50 an hour, or,
Yeah.
yeah. So that-
Spending that much money on 1,500 cars a day,
Doesn't seem
I
like,
don't believe it's worth it.
Well,
Just for reference, Bob used to live on Hershey,
Okay.
so he's familiar with that intersection.
Jim, I don't know if you have that, you had some rough numbers, but the cost, you mentioned a minute ago, now, if you take signals out of the equation, that would change your, or if you're able to take signals out of the equation, that'll change your cost estimates. But you had some rough ideas of what the intersection costs were.
That's correct. Let me show the last alternative here, and then we'll talk about costs on all three of them here. So this is straight out of the EA. This is the preferred alternative for it. This is a realignment of green, so that green and green line up now. If you'll see, the roadway shifts to the east and has a signalized intersection there at Green and Mississippi Drive / Hershey there.
Is there any electronic lights or anything of that nature, or are they just yield signs on this?
oh, it's
This would be a traffic signal here.
signalized.
Yep. So here again, pros and cons on this, and this is new from the last presentation. This is a very traditional design, so people are used to the movement like this. The geometry does align Green Street, so you don't have that offset intersection anymore.
So what?
The cons on this one is the highest cost of the three. It does use the most right-of-way and does not have that free-flowing traffic on Mississippi like the other two might have. So as far as costs, there is a cost range here. The roundabout is about $1 million. The sweep is about 1.1 million, and that does include traffic signal costs. And that EA preferred alternative is about 1.7 million, all told. Here again, it includes all right-of-way and signalization costs, if we need.
We already own Carver Corner.
Carver Corner.
We're gonna, but whether, no matter which one of these three we're doing, we own Carver Corner, we'd be buying the beach possibly. I mean, aren't we almost committed to buying other properties along there that we've talked about? We're not, or just shut up at this point.
That's where you stop.
Can I just like go over there and slap you real quick?
Okay.
We need to evaluate the options and see what's the preferred alternative before we can determine which properties we need to acquire.
So we'll circle back to this. I want to talk a little bit more about the Second and Mulberry as well, and then towards the end, we'll talk about the environmental assessment and how that impacts both these intersections as well, which may play into your thought process a little bit more.
Is that a roundabout approach?
It is a roundabout
what I
approach, yes,
thought.
thank you.
Save yourself.
So I'm going to jump to the other end of the project, or close to the end of the project. This is a roundabout alternative at Second and Mulberry. H&I campus is up on the upper right portion of the project, actually, and lower right for that matter. This is a roundabout in lieu of the traditional intersection that is at Second and Mulberry currently. Some of the pros on this, it actually is a lower cost because on this particular one, we're pulling that traffic signal out again. We do have free-flowing traffic, especially during event times, and that's one of the things that our traffic study has shown, that during event, especially this particular intersection fails pretty miserably on the traffic flow and the level of service. It is a good gateway to the downtown area. Here again, that aesthetic design side of things. But it also avails better traffic flows, especially as it relates to H&I operations. We've sized it so that truck traffic can come in from the east heading westbound and actually do a 180, a U-turn and back out without having to go through downtown to get in and out. The cons on it, there is a different traffic flow than before. It does take up a little bit more land than that traditional intersection, and it does impact different properties than what's originally planned in the EA. So this is the look at a traditional signalized intersection. This would be with Second with two-way traffic on both legs. It would be a three-lane section on all three legs, so we have a dedicated right turn lane going northbound, and very similar but refined from what you have out there currently today. It also happens to be very similar to the EA preferred alternative in this area, and that's why we're showing it and taking a look at it, a hard look at it. Of course, we have to go through pros and cons again on this one. Traditional design, it does take up less of a footprint, so it doesn't impact any existing buildings out there. The cons are it does have higher costs than what the roundabout would be. Here again, those traffic signals are spendy. There is less area for a downtown gateway, and it does have more traffic congestion at that intersection during event time. Cost range, these are a little bit closer in cost than what you saw at Carver Corner. With the roundabout, we're planning level estimates about $700,000 to implement it, and about $850,000 for a four-way signalized intersection there. Here again, does include any roundabout, or excuse me, right-of-way costs and any signalization costs. So, before I move on, talking a little bit other things, I know we're going on roundabout, back to this a little bit later, but any questions regarding this intersection or thoughts? Yes, sir.
So, you said this one's a little bit on the roundabout on Second and Mulberry. In your second page, you talked about your project team. Have you had discussions with the local semi-traffic that's in there as far as H&I or whoever this is going to affect the most?
We did. We actually talked to H&I before we even put pencil to paper about their operations, how they get truck traffic in and out during normal days, and also if there's any flooding events where they close off the floodgates and that sort of thing. And then also talk to them about what their future operations are with their major shifts and changes. So.
And they're good with?
They were in favor of the roundabout because it really helped their operations. The biggest movement, you know, like on the loading dock on Second there, where there could be 15 or 20 semis there, they can actually just do a right out and roundabout out around and go eastbound instead of having to cross traffic.
So to put it in perspective of my mind, the roundabout that we have on Cedar Street, from one end to the other end, is how big?
I believe it's about a 90-foot diameter, and we actually have a graphic showing what Cedar Street looks like size-wise in relation to these roundabouts. A few more slides from me.
This one would be?
It's bigger. It's a minimum of a 10-foot bigger diameter than cedar.
Let's see.
Okay, 120-foot diameter for cedar, sorry.
Yeah, our original design on Cedar Street was 90 foot, and IDOT wouldn't approve it, so we went to 120. So,
And I can jump forward. If you take a look, the red circle on there is Cedar Street, and we have at minimum another 10 feet.
Okay.
That Second and Mulberry, probably from time to time, due to floods, that could impact the traffic going through that intersection, as far as detours and stuff, so we'd have to,
fix the whole corridor then.
well,
It does now.
yeah, we will stay out of floods. Yeah.
Any other thoughts or questions on?
All I have, thank you.
Sounds good. So next thing I want to do is just share with you some of the polling results from the last public meeting. We did ask the public if they have the possibility of traditional and roundabout designs, would they be in favor of moving forward with that? 63%, and then we also asked about Second Street as a two-way permanently. Some of the results here, we did have 63% favoring the two-way, 70% favored a roundabout at Carver Corner, 67 would consider back-end angle parking, 76 favored a combination of what we call hardscape ornamental plantings and trees and medians. The level of landscaping that we were showing, and we showed several different kind of levels of landscaping, and this was the, let's put more hardscape in and provide less maintenance for in the future alternative. And 79% favored a roundabout and at Second and Mulberry. Casey, you want to take over and talk a little bit about aesthetics?
Yeah, I'll just go through this quickly because you've all seen it and been through this. But some of the specific things we've been talking about are some intersection improvements, mainly at kind of our key intersections, Iowa Avenue being one of these. We're looking at some different treatments in the intersection paving itself, as well as improved crosswalks, kind of what we do at the median nosing, that kind of thing. Here's another example from Sycamore Street. We looked at some paving inlays, doing some decorative elements here, but again, trying to focus most of this kind of higher end finishes and more detailed design at these key intersections. Could be opportunities for seating areas, ornamental plantings, use of local limestone, that kind of thing. Here's a more detailed look at, just a quick concept of what we might consider to be that detailed design, showing a seating area, some type of pattern in the paving, maybe incorporating some decorative unit pavers, maybe the Purinton pavers, which the city currently has a lot of these in stock and could be a nice addition to the streetscape. Quickly, here's some images of what some of these items look like, different uses of plantings, the patterning and the pavement, the use of pavers in the sidewalk design. A little more unique to this design than what currently is out there now is we're looking at pedestrian refuge space in the medians. This is particularly important as it shortens the length of the distance that the pedestrian is going to have to cross without a point of refuge, and provides a much safer crossing of Mississippi Drive. Accessible on-street parking is fairly non-existent currently. This is pretty typical in most urban streetscapes. We are looking at adding accessible on-street parking with a separate pedestrian ramp at these spaces. We haven't determined where or how many of these spaces we're going to have, but something we're going to be incorporating into the design where possible. Again, here's some other imagery, precedent imagery of materials and finishes. the use of concrete decorative pavers, both traditional concrete unit pavers as well as historical Purrington pavers as well.
Those surfaces cause issues with when they get wet, they slick, or they do the snow removal, the tripping hazard because of irregularities in the bricks.
Yeah, that's the Purrington pavers, the historical pavers, definitely have a much more irregular finish to them, and we're only going to be using those in areas where we're not promoting pedestrian traffic. The medians is a good example. We're looking at areas near some tree planter areas along the sidewalk, kind of between those and the back of curb, so that it's out of the pedestrian route. So it's, you know, anywhere where we're promoting pedestrian movements, we're going to be ADA compliant, and the surfaces of the what I call more traditional, which is a typical concrete unit paver, have a more consistent finish, much tighter joints, and are ADA compliant. Those are slip resistant, so we don't have to worry about those. You know, we typically are fairly conservative when we're looking at uses of these materials and making sure that they're maintainable and, you know, accessible and so forth.
The end result is we have to be concerned about maintenance. If we keep adding, we keep adding trails and mowing along the trails and scooping, cleaning the trails, and if we're doing a bunch of work downtown here that we need to do the same thing to and annual maintenance, you just got to increase staff. And
I think there's probably two words that I've used at every meeting that I've had with Bolton and Mink and HDR, and that's low maintenance.
Yeah.
So
we are, we on other projects, we're doing a lot of permeable pavers in the streets. So taking essentially these same pavers, putting them in the streets, knowing that they're going to have road graders and front end loaders and everything else, snow plows going over them, peeling the snow right off them, and we wouldn't be promoting a similar paver if we didn't think that it could hold up to the maintenance. So, and we're not, on this project, we're not promoting permeable pavers, but just using that comparison that they can withstand these seasonal maintenance. We talked a little bit about kind of the levels of landscaping, kind of the community preferred option here for incorporating landscaping into the medians. I think one of the community members said it pretty well and said that, you know, we want to focus the pretty stuff in, you know, the downtown core and the areas that are going to have, it's going to have the most impact, and not get too fussy in the medians and look at a lot of, you know, high maintenance ornamental planting. So it's just kind of a quick graphic that shows kind of the comparison of what we used to describe this, but the general consensus was, you know, do it smart, do it, you know, where it makes sense, but not go too big and too overboard with the median landscaping and so forth.
Is there a good choice of landscaping plants that are salt tolerant?
Yeah, you know, several resources, you know, based on using native Iowa plant material and other studies. There's kind of a laundry list of studies that have been done to show which are the best salt tolerant and kind of sturdiest plant material, if you will, and we incorporate those in all of our projects. So we're typically looking for the stuff that's tried and true. We never really try anything for the first time on a municipal project, to say that, but so we'll be using the right kind of plant material that's appropriate for this climate.
We'd hate to have to replant them every year, you know.
Yeah.
One of the resources that we use is the Minnesota DOT, who's done a pretty extensive study on salt tolerance for plantings. We figured it's a lot colder and a lot saltier up there during the winter, so if it lives in Minnesota, it'll do well.
Well, in the last several years, you guys are out of Des Moines, you know about snow. And the difficulties, you know, poor designs could really cause difficulty with snow removals.
Absolutely. We touched a little bit on street lighting. We showed a few different examples, kind of a more contemporary, a more traditional, and more of kind of a historic character with the lighting. This is just kind kind of sums it up, the community preferred, kind of a nod to the historic lighting. You know, we're gonna have two different types, essentially. It's what I call a roadway height fixture. It's kind of at that 22, 25-foot height. Allows us to spread out the lights a little more so we don't have as much clutter on the street. But we incorporate some historic character. The single head fixtures, what would be typical along the corridor, and then the double head fixtures where we might use through the bluff area and the median, where we don't have pedestrians, we don't have sidewalks necessarily, and it allows us to put that lighting down the center of the road. We're going to try to incorporate some signage and monumentation into the corridor design. Here's just an example of one of the concepts we came up with early on, but trying to incorporate a nod to the kind of post-industrial era, if you will, the use of local materials, steel, iron, limestone, different concrete. So here's just an example of how we might incorporate some of that monumentation and wayfinding into the corridor design. Jim?
One question. You you showed the lights that you had.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a design that we talked about in the community as well, correct?
The light?
Yeah.
Greg?
I didn't hear you mention that earlier.
Yeah, during the community meetings, we showcased 3 different light styles, if you will, kind of a contemporary, a historic, and what I'd call a timeless or a hodgepodge between the two. And community consensus was to a nod toward the historic. Now, when we say historic, it's historic looking, but it is a high-performance, energy-efficient light.
Is that the one?
Yeah,
It'll be similar to this, yes.
Okay.
it's pretty overwhelming. That was the choice.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that they knew that if we were going with that, that was going to be a community choice, not just.
Correct.
Just a comment on the wayfinding, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, or committee, or board, or whatever, it's changed over the years. That's one of their goals, is to have better wayfinding, because visitors to the city, if they, if it's hard to find something, they're gonna go on.
Yeah, we're going to be, this kind of shows a range, kind of what we call a family of signage, showing different scales, how we do a kiosk, how we do a directional signage, even down to something mounted on the footing of a light pole or something to kind of showcase a certain street or, historic element. So we'll definitely be reaching out to other folks, and as we start to develop these concepts more for the branding and wayfinding.
Mm-hmm.
Just want to touch base real quick on the quiet zones, as Mr. Goldman had talked about earlier. It is a pretty nice impact, not necessarily part of the Mississippi Drive reconstruction project, but it's certainly an influencer on it. Where he talked about earlier, the long-term solution on this is to go from Mad Creek and at least a quarter mile north of that for the quiet zone. That's on the far right on the bottom. Sorry, it's a little bit hard to see here. And then the quiet zone's big enough that it doesn't fit on the screen real well, so we sliced it, and that other crossing is down at the lift station where Mississippi Drive turns, and here again a quarter mile past that. So it's a pretty significant potential quiet zone for the downtown area. So next thing I want to talk about is environmental assessment stipulations. The EA was adopted this last year. It was, Greg, a 7-year effort?
Probably closer to 8.
8-year effort to get through the planning study for this. What it did was put some stipulations on the corridor itself. One is the right-of-way or the land use stipulations for the project. When we start looking at roundabouts and getting out of that land use that's stipulated in the EA, we'll just say it changes things. There's some things we'd have to work through to get to that point. As part of the EA, we're also looking at doing vibration monitoring in a multitude of historic buildings. I believe there was a total of 41 buildings, 27 of which are required to do vibration monitoring throughout the construction process. There will be an archaeological investigation in 4 different areas in the corridor itself. And then finally, historic architectural review in the Papoose Creek area of the historic tunnels down there. And this is all part, here again, a part of the environmental assessment.
Historic sewer.
Yeah, I guess.
It's old. See if there's any arrowheads down there.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit more about environmental assessment options. There's several things that we're looking at that are major influencers on this project and could have an impact on the definition of the EA and how we move forward. So as you're thinking about roundabouts versus sweeps versus traditional intersections, you must also probably think about the environmental assessment side of things and how that may change things. There's several different options that we can look at as we potentially implement some of these alternatives. One is we can build within that NEPR cleared footprint, the area that the EA has already said, go forth and build it in this area. Another option that we can look at is defederalizing the project by giving back the federal EA grant money. That takes away some of the requirements as part of the EA potentially, but it does still fall under that state historical and archaeological requirements. So not everything might necessarily go away as part of that if we do defederalize it. The third option is to prepare a reevaluation memo. This is basically opening up a part of the EA, not totally opening up, but doing a reevaluation memo for those intersections under the auspices of the current EA, which will take a little bit of time, and but gives you a little bit more flexibility as far as design for those areas. So I asked you at the start that we wanted a little bit of feedback, and I've thrown a lot of information at you tonight. The things that we really want to talk about and really have an impact not only on the project itself, but the schedule for implementation of it, are primarily the roundabouts at Carver and 2nd and Mulberry because of the EA implications of it. But let's start with maybe some of the easier ones. The 3-lane typical cross-section. I know we had a lot of discussion in the community about how that might function, how that cars and EMS vehicles might get around. Is there any questions or thoughts on that section itself?
The entire section?
It would be a 3-lane section with median or turn lanes through the entire
So you're
section.
talking the entire stretch?
No, because you can't do it at the bottom of the bluff.
Right. It was different.
Okay.
All right? You can do it at the bottom of the bluff, right?
I thought the bluff was
Three.
okay with 3 lanes.
You can't put 3 lanes in it.
Yes.
You can?
That's 3 now.
You can still do that with the median, but not 3 lanes.
Correct.
Right.
That's what that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
How about in front of the Merrill Hotel?
Be
That's
a-
not 3-lane either, is it?
It would be one travel lane in each direction and either median or turn lane.
So we're talking 3-lane on part of the entire section then.
When I say the third lane, it's a turn lane. That's it.
Does that satisfy the needs of the Merrill Hotel?
Okay.
I'll just mention what I mentioned at the community meeting was it's a possibility that boaters that are trying to cross the rail tracks, if they get delayed somehow, we got to somehow accommodate the fact that traffic will back up behind them because they can't get around with just the one lane. So I think that's something we need to keep in mind, particularly people with big pickups and 30-foot boats. You know, they can take up a lot of roadway waiting to get across the intersections.
That's one of the things we're looking at is not only will we have left turn lanes into the park as you're going westbound, but also we're looking at putting a slip lane for the right turn at Cedar into the park where we have space for it so you can pull off to the side and come through.
I've talked to some of the boaters, and of course now the trains can delay them, obviously. And then because of the radius of the turns going across railroad tracks, if there's people coming out of the riverfront, they can't turn in because they have to make such a wide turn, you know, they get over in the other lane, so they have to wait till the lane really clears before they can move.
And we talked a little bit about that. I think that's wonderful feedback. And one of the things that we're looking at doing is wider radiuses and potentially even wider overall going into the park itself. And then finally, the other thing that we talked about was just the high centering of the boats
Yeah,
going
the
over the
boats get
tracks
hung up
itself.
on
And that's something that we're actually looking at raising the whole Mississippi Drive in that area so that there's a less of a slope coming through there.
Right now, the boats can get hung up on the Cedar Street crossing, so they have to go down the Iowa Street crossing.
Which is
to get
better, but not
across.
great.
But then they got a long way to travel, then back up to get to the boat ramp.
Correct, yep.
And we've yet to see the park design too, and there may be less parking down there, so it might not be as big an issue as.
Yep, and
is now.
the park is slated for a design master plan that's actually just now starting to go.
I'm okay with the 3-lane. That's what you're looking for.
I am. How about back-end angled parking? We've heard from one person at least.
At the public meetings, I wasn't in favor of the backing in parking. I don't see that working well.
I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with doing a trial, but I don't like it.
The majority of the public were there. Yeah. The majority of the people at the public meeting were okay with it, and I'm okay with it. I've heard that it's being used in other cities in Iowa, but.
The one thing about the back-end angled parking, I think it was a wonderful idea to test it out, give it a try somewhere. The other thing that ultimately, if the community doesn't feel like it's successful, you can always go to parallel parking. But keep in mind that we will lose about half the stalls to do that.
Why could you just repaint it to go the other direction?
I wouldn't advocate angled back out parking on the corridor with the amount of traffic that you have through there. That's one of the things that we actually looked at as part of the whole process to do that. We also looked at parallel parking on both sides of the street in the areas that we could, and it just wasn't, it didn't pan out with the existing right-of-way that we had.
But you had, if I remember the drawings, you had kind of a buffer zone from what ended up being the front end of the car to the actual lane, to whether you're pull over a little bit and back in, it seemed like you were pretty much out of the traveled lane anyway. So if you were pulling in or backing out, it didn't make a whole lot of difference. There was a buffer zone. People can see your lights when you're backing up.
My concern isn't seeing the lights, it's the people actually backing up, not seeing the traffic.
Well, I know.
Yeah, and if you're back into a spot, you should have a better line of sight to pull out in the traffic. The other safety feature that I'm not
If
sure
you got
if you touched on it.
kids getting out or something, they're gonna get out towards the sidewalk versus towards the traffic.
Exactly right. You're never exposed to live traffic. You're always on the sidewalk side, loading kids, goods, groceries.
But you can have a small vehicle parked, and then there's this full-size van that pulls in and backs in next to it, and you have no visibility at any time from the little vehicle.
And it,
I mean, this is just feedback for him. I mean, it's not, to me, this is very similar, the front-end parking, just like we have in front of, right there on Iowa Avenue. I mean, you just drive in, but it's not rear end, and you still kind of come in, you're racking out into oncoming traffic, except there's not that much traffic there compared to what we would be seeing here, so.
the difference between Iowa and Mississippi is just the sheer volume of traffic, especially truck traffic.
That's what I'm getting at, so I understand. I'm just explaining the challenges as far as reversing.
I think I could get behind the back-end angled parking, but I think I kind of like the idea of trying it out. Maybe we repaint Iowa Avenue and give it a swing for a while.
But if we just make the parking lots down there bigger? Just that way they're not on the street, they're in a safe spot inside a parking.
Yeah, maybe buy some more lots.
So is the consensus to maybe
City
test this
right
out a
away.
little bit?
Yep.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Jim, one other comment though, could you remind us the difference between parallel and back and angled, the numbers that we would lose with parallel parking?
You're going to get about a half the amount of parking if you do parallel versus angled.
It's just a piece of one block anyway, isn't it?
And parallel, back end is half the movement of parallel, so it's much easier movement than adding parallel parking on Mississippi Drive.
The hard part about back-end angle parking is it's different. Right, that's the big thing.
Well, it's different, but it's not, because the first half of parallel parking is pulling up and backing in to the parallel parking stall, so.
Right.
I mean, we do that now, but this seems different, but in a way, it's not.
I think it's a great idea to try it out.
With that thought, we'd work with city staff to find a place that we can test it out, put some signage up, and let the community feel it out before we finalize.
And it's something to be, I guess if you can get more cars per block, it kind of makes up for the fact there won't be any parking in the Merrill block on the street.
Correct.
There's not that much parking there anyway that's public. There's what?
2 spaces.
Dozen spots along the, or less, not even a dozen spots along the Mississippi Drive.
Right.
I mean, you're not, you probably have 6 to 8
In front of the hotel.
in front of the existing hotel and then where the hotel's being
Existing
built.
hotel, I meant.
Jim, how many feet is the buffer zone?
I believe it's 3 feet.
3.
All right, so those were the easy ones. Now we're going roundabout here.
I do have one final comment about
Yes,
the
sir.
roundabout.
Another one?
I believe that you said by one of your charts up there, about 70% of the people wanted a roundabout. I believe that you might have had roughly 100 people there. Adding another 500 people that wasn't there, that did say that they did not want that roundabout, you're roughly saying 70 people yes, 530 people no, which is an 88% not in favor of the roundabout. We need to find another solution.
Bob, what are the objections the folks have? The 500 folks, what are their objections?
Number one, that they don't care for the roundabout that we currently have.
Why?
They claim that there's more accidents.
Have there been accidents?
That's not
It's
true.
probably a variety of reasons, I
No.
would guess.
Yeah.
There have been no accidents.
There's been two.
Two.
I'm not gonna call them accidents. I guess I think one of them ran the curb, and the second one. Do you remember what the second one was? Oh, I think she went the wrong way on the.
Went the wrong way on the roundabout?
Oh, yeah.
What else is on their mind?
Ouch.
Also, that they're that they're the older folks that may need a little bit more room to be able to drive their vehicles. And last but not least, that they're one person that actually pays taxes as well as we do. And if they pay taxes and we don't listen to them, I'm sure there's going to be some type of repercussion of some sort. So I really, truly am not in favor of it. My vote would possibly be item number 2, not 3. That's if we fix that
Not really.
section at all.
So a couple comments on roundabouts. I'll be the first to admit, I am a proponent of roundabouts if they are done correctly and are used in the right scenario. And I do firmly believe that these two intersections would do well with roundabouts. That being said, we have looked at multiple different alternatives. The roundabout just happens to be a lot different than what's there currently, and that's one of the reasons we've brought it to the community. Now, one of the reasons we bring it to the community in an open community forum is to help educate the people to understand how the roundabouts function and how they are different than maybe some other instances. So I feel like the feedback that we got both in the first public meeting and the second public meeting were very favorable, knowing that hopefully they understand why we're looking at roundabouts and why they might function well there. That being said, I think that, listening to the community and getting a petition is also an important element of community outreach, and that should be thought of as well as we're going through the design. I'm not here to sell you that roundabouts are the best thing in the world. I am here to tell you that they function well in these two scenarios. They also happen to be a little bit cheaper. The other two scenarios, they function also. They function in different ways than roundabouts. And one of the things that we're really looking for feedback-wise is which direction to go on a council level. Now, technical things aside and how they function and if people like them or not, that's one element. The other element that we need to talk about here again is that environmental assessment side of things. And if we are looking at roundabouts, we have the potential of probably pulling out those roundabouts in this phase 1 construction package, because the time it's going to take to get through that EA to get them in place is going to slow down the entire project, and we don't want that. We want the momentum moving along. So keep in mind that that is a component of our thought process here, and ultimately might waver your decision one way or the other as far as what we might. So there's a lot of balls juggling in the air with the whole concept of just a couple of intersections on this.
Jim, I know you've built roundabouts in other communities. Have you heard the same amount of resistance from the citizens in the other communities towards roundabouts as you have in our community?
Change is always a hard thing, and whenever you put something new in and different, you are going to hear pushback. Also, we as a company have rebuilt roundabouts that have been done maybe too small or maybe not in the right spot too. So we feel like we don't recommend them unless we feel that it is a technically sound solution.
My question is it common that you do have people that are opposed to putting a roundabout? So this is
and by no means
parts of the country that are not used to them. I've lived in other states that have had them for over 100 years, and everybody's used to them, and they don't give them a second thought.
Yep, and quite honestly, these are very simple designs. We have done interstate interchange roundabouts. We've done double roundabouts, a roundabout into another roundabout. We have done way more complex than this, with pretty good success actually. And I don't think that they would be around if they weren't a successful alternative.
I can also mention that some citizens on Cedar Street that were opposed to that before it was constructed have come to me. I didn't solicit them, but they've come to me and they said they really like it now. Just as an example.
Yep.
I come down on the side of the roundabouts, but I don't know if I'm in the minority here or not.
And I know it's not an easy solution because there are a lot of factors out there. There's a lot of public outcry, whether it's positive or negative. We're emotional about roundabouts for one reason or the other. If we put a traffic signal up, nobody would complain. It might not function as well as a roundabout. But there's a lot of elements to consider as we're looking at this. One of the considerations is time and the ability to implement those, whether we put it in this phase of the project or if we have to wait for that.
I think you're saying it'd have to be in a later phase.
That's our recommendation at this point, yes.
So is that later phase going to be 8 years like it's taken us to get this EA? I mean,
God, I hope not.
when you throw that out, is it a short period of time or is it a long period of time?
It looks to me like if you build within the EA as it is today, that is our most expensive option in terms of building the two roundabouts. So then you have to weigh that against the cost and the time involved that it would take to file the memorandum to redo those two.
But do we have the space to build within the EA?
We do not have the space to build within the EA, and that's what takes the time to open up that MOU, excuse me.
God, you want to surely open that thing up. It's taken 8 years to get it to this
But we're not
point.
talking 7 or 8 years, and we're working with Impact 7G. You're talking
12 to 18 months.
12 to 18 months. 2 years. To get that done, and that's as we move into Grandview in 2019. So it's not
But you have
difficult to
them at
include
both ends of the project, so you only do the middle?
The Carver corner, the Carver corner is an easy one to put into the Grandview because they're directly attached to each other, if you will.
Right.
We can still build the second and Mulberry as part of the Grandview project, even though it's not connected. We just need to design to make sure that it fits into it in the future.
For me, I think it's most important that we build it correctly and for the long term. And we have an opportunity to put it, I mean, we've talked about at the beginning from this being a gateway project, a project that connects the downtown and the riverfront and has aesthetic value as well. And I just want to make sure that we do it right. So if we have to wait a little bit, and if that's the choice that the council wants to make, and we have to wait a little bit to do it right, I think we just do it right the first time.
By 18 to 24 months, HNI will have theirs all done by that time.
12 to 18, 12 to 18.
I mean, that needs to be worked into their project.
6 more projects done by that time.
I look at the long-term, it moves traffic more efficiently and at a lower cost, long-term.
Yeah, lower maintenance costs, long-term.
You don't have signals that you're maintaining, and I know we do it through MPW and all that, but I just think long-term it makes the most sense.
What kind of dollars are we talking about giving back the EA grant?
Is it the 800 or the 1.3? 800? I mean, you can look at that. I mean, the last estimate I had on vibration monitoring was around $150,000. So that, would that item go away as part of that?
Choice to defederalize it.
If you paid back.
We actually met with FHWA and the DOT, and that's one of the suggestions that they brought to the table.
To defederalize it. So what happens to the 40-plus buildings that we need to have a monitoring device on? We don't monitor them, and then we get sued for a collapse or major cracks in a building?
Whether it's state or...
Or would the state require the same thing?
It's our belief the state would not require that. However, we would have to follow standard construction practices and make sure that those buildings are evaluated prior to construction and after construction, and that's as much on the contractor as it is the city.
Greg, how much is it going to cost and how long to do the state historic and archaeologicals?
As part of the project or the part that we're already doing related to T-Strake, because that's already paid for as part of the current funding. The T-Strake portion is. The additional archaeological, do you have an estimate for that at this point in time?
I don't. I know there is 4 different sites that they're looking at, and I do not have a number because I don't know the magnitude of the evaluation.
I mean, technically,
There's actually
the EA work is not even complete yet because we have to finish the
book for
the book for T-Strake, or for the ice house property.
Puritan Ice.
Puritan Ice, yes.
What's your recommendation, Greg? This is Hobson's choice here?
I think the bookends of the roundabouts are probably my recommendation, and I think staff's recommendation as well, but they can certainly speak for themselves. And we're much more comfortable with the firm that we're working with right now, Impact 7G, and working through the EA process on Grandview, and we think we can get this done in a 12 to 18 month period. So I think at this point in time, given the cost, experience that we've had with roundabouts, I think it's certainly my recommendation to go with roundabouts. I've had a lot of positive comments on Cedar Street subsequent to those negative voices that have turned around to be positive voices as well. The EA is concerning, and I hate it.
Figure out what the good choice is.
EA is concerning. There's no doubt about it.
And I've got just a couple comments here. At our public meetings, I would think it could be safely said that was not a true representation of the cross-section of the citizens of Muscatine.
But everyone was invited.
I understand that. But I'm just saying that there was pretty much one group of individuals from Muscatine in that area. So
Yeah, I agree with that observation.
so the South Enders that Bob's talking about probably weren't there. Were they invited? Yes. We didn't talk anything about the Bluff section. We did major sewer project. We put new concrete in from where the Bluff starts, in essence, at that brewery thing there, and on down almost to the corner. And I'd really not be thrilled about tearing a bunch of it out. If you're going to cut a section out of the middle and put grass and trees or pavers, I probably would have to say that's unnecessary.
Agreed.
Second and Mulberry, I mean, I commend H&I for what they're doing down there. I mean, I think what they're doing is fantastic. But if we set back on this in Roundabout, we bid that separately, I'm concerned that they might think, well, the Roundabout's gonna go through, so we're gonna do X, and we find out that this is not gonna work, and all of a sudden, they've designed for a roundabout, now there's no roundabout, and we have a mess. I don't think I'm ready to, at this point, I don't have enough information to say roundabouts at Carver and Mulberry. I think even when Cedar Street was being put in or was discussed, I was not in favor of that. It's not a bad intersection. I think it's still too small. I think the grade going in and out of it is too steep. Carver Corner is a perfectly flat section, except where you have to deal with Green Street, the hill side.
Yep.
But if you eliminate signalization from the big sweep, as you called it, I think that's what you called it, then it's less money than what the roundabout.
But can you? It goes outside the EA area.
I don't think it does.
We don't,
No, the sweep doesn't.
The sweep doesn't, I don't believe.
we don't know, though, if you can eliminate the signals, that you'd have to determine that.
Well, excuse me, we'd have to do a warrant analysis of the intersection there.
It wouldn't be a three-way stop, though, we'd just be talking about one traffic light, wouldn't we? Or would
Correct.
would
Yeah,
this-
we wouldn't do a three-way stop sign there, no.
Before we end the presentation, there's one intersection we haven't talked about, so I don't want to forget that before we stop.
Okay.
The foot of Mulberry and Mississippi Drive, that's a right-angle corner. And that's as much of a troublesome intersection as any of the other intersections.
Yeah, and then a lot of that is kind of the grade that goes through there too. You get a little wonky as you're going through.
So have you looked at that? I mean,
We're doing improvements on that as well, yes.
Raising the grade.
In that area, I'd have to go back and look at our vertical profile on
Because we have
that.
really nice retaining walls on both sides of that now as a result of
Flooding.
Mad Creek
Yeah.
improvement project that took forever.
we're kind of concerned about right-angle turns at Carver and right-angle turns at Second and Mulberry, but you got one hell of a right-angle turn on Mulberry and Mississippi Drive, so. And that's probably one of the harder ones to negotiate.
Because of the
You can't change it.
walls.
I know, but, well, you could.
Well, there's
You
been
could- you could
discussion
go
also
toward the
of
town side
the
with it.
closure on the east side of that, as you're coming off there.
Going into HNI's property
Correct.
and do what with it?
Potential closure of that.
Okay.
That was actually, I believe, H&I driven or suggested.
Because there's a rail spur.
Spur. Yep.
Comes back around the corner there.
Any other thoughts on roundabouts? Any questions I can answer for you? I know I'm throwing a lot of information and
Still think they're a good long-term option, and I'm thinking back on Cedar again, not the roundabout part of it, but we had several options, the council did, whenever we started designing, or giving our input on design, and the trails, or the trail that's on the north side of Cedar was an extra cost, and I don't think there's anybody now that would say that has been a good improvement for the city, for people exercising, bicycling, walking. So I think I'm using the same analogy on this. I think that if we think long-term, they're gonna make more sense.
Sure.
And if it's gonna be a 18-month delay, then, you know, these big projects take a lot of time anyway, and I think it can still be accomplished. I'm concerned about this defederalization, all the dollars that go back that way, but.
Sure. And that's, we are looking at two different parallel tracks on the EA portion of the thing, whether it's the defederalization or whether we open up the memorandum and revise that. To see least cost scenario, least time scenario on it.
Is there a map that you have showing what's superimposed on these sections of the EA covers? This is okay, go outside of here, now we gotta change this? Is that, or is that a section of it that I missed?
There's the EA at Second and Mulberry in yellow.
Oh.
Essentially what it is now.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Maybe a little tweaking on the corner.
Well, that's where the EA preferred alternative.
Yep.
Okay, you answered my question then.
And has the sewer work, et cetera, and everything been done at that intersection?
No.
No.
Okay.
No, you go on out.
Okay, so that's Second and Mulberry. Carver Corner, and I apologize, I cut off the bottom side of this. This is the preferred alternative at Carver Corner.
So the sweep is outside of the EA then?
It is, but it isn't. It doesn't impact historic properties like the Roundabout does.
Because it
So
would
there's
actually
a
come up
more
Green Street
flexibility.
and make the sweep,
Yeah.
rather than all.
When
jogging
can you get us
right.
information on the sweep affected by the electrical, if we need the lights or not?
As
That's
far
what
as,
that's
if we
what
need
council
traffic signals?
approved a year ago.
Okay.
We'd have to go and just
More
do a
cells.
simple analysis of it.
Well, he knows
It would
it.
probably in the next week or two.
Two new members know it, didn't remember it.
Okay.
We've approved that a year ago, is that correct?
Less
That
than a
was
year
the
ago.
preferred alternative as part of the EA process and the alternatives that you were provided at the time.
So that's a yes.
Yes,
Yes.
I mean, as part of the EA, right.
Previous council decided that that was probably the best route to save as much of the existing concrete as possible.
That's what I'm asking, so then that's technically is gonna be less than the 1.1 million that you had initially had for the sweep, due to the fact that we would be saving a little bit of the concrete, saving the sewer, and then and if we remove the electrical,
Nope.
No,
We still have to
this
open
option
up
was,
the
this option was the highest.
1.7.
This is the highest.
That's the 1.7.
The sweep was the one that had the
the 1.1, the sweep's 1.1 right here. is what
1.1,
it
but
says.
with
Yeah.
signalization included.
Here's a breakdown.
The sweep.
The preferred, EA preferred is the most expensive, takes the most land and has signals, and it actually takes, I think, the most pavement too.
One thing to point out at Carver Corner too, the pavement is old in that area. The newer pavement starts to the east of that intersection, so if you want to go back to that.
Right.
Not very
One
far.
that you thought,
Not
that's
very
not
far,
the
but.
sweep.
Not very far.
But that doesn't matter,
That's
it's
what you
still
were-
not there.
But I thought, yeah.
That's not the sweep.
Now, the storm sewer trunk line that goes over to Main Street, that is new. That's a 42-inch
Yeah.
main. That's new, but the pavement is
Right at the intersection.
that's correct.
This may seem out of order of what we're doing, but I don't think it is. Could you go back to slide 3 as long as you're going in that direction?
As long as you tell me which one slide 3 is. 'Cause
Is project process, where are we? Boom. Is this the preliminary design?
This is preliminary design.
Okay. And what do you need specifically from us to get moving on that final design, so we don't start losing?
Our need for tonight is to let us know if there is a thought process about roundabouts or not still. If there is, we will pull those out of our design process at this point and more fully realize what we have to do with the EA. If you don't want roundabouts, we will push ahead with other designs and
Okay.
forge ahead.
Click a couple forward.
Okay.
You know, do you have the information you need now to do the grades and things in front of the Merrill Hotel? Is the railroad come to an agreement? Can you start designing that stretch?
The railroad has given us their final design on the tracks. And yes, we are able to look at the grades
Okay.
throughout the,
So you can determine the finished grade is fine. That's
and
ready.
and unless the Merrill Hotel site plan changes from the last version that they gave us, we can
Okay.
forge ahead with that as well.
So you could.
Was that a caveat? Sorry.
You could, yeah, you could start on this center section then.
The plan has always been to kind of start from there and work
Right.
out.
Right.
As far as construction phasing, we know the importance of getting that done as soon as possible in front of the
Maybe first
hotel.
design too. Huh?
We're kind of working our way out.
Okay, 'cause there's no way we want to hold that up.
No, no, that's been clear from day one.
Okay, so you have everything you need to know to start at the hotel and work opposite.
Everything as far as roadway, I think there's a few utilities things that are a little bit up in the air right now in that area.
Imagine that.
Disagreements or just questions?
That would not require council input necessarily, would it?
No, that's just coordination with
Coordination with the hotel.
utilities and MPW.
So you've got everything you need to start the final design process in that center section?
In the center section, yes.
Okay, great.
For there,
There's something, I'm kind of surprised we haven't covered this, you know, I know you have to talk about light fixtures and stuff. I haven't heard anything about, you know, the actual cost, you know, you're an engineer, what, are we looking at minimum standards for the roadway construction? The DOT says it ought to be X inches thick and a certain consistency and blah, blah, blah. Are we looking about making it better than minimum to save us money in the long run?
We're actually getting geotechnical reports throughout the whole corridor, so you may see a drill rig out there putting some holes in pavement, because what might work down in the downtown area might be different up the hill a little bit. We certainly design.
Life cycle cost is what I'm looking for.
Yep. We design for the loading and the traffic levels that you will have on this roadway. We do not skimp on the design for that. And we design to statewide urban design standards for it.
But those are minimum standards.
Minimal.
In fact, traffic engineering is one of your specialties, is it not?
It is, yep.
watch out for clamshells.
Not me personally. I'm not the traffic guy.
I mean, your firm.
Yes.
In your experience, do you know what you would do if you wanted to up it from minimum? Would it be a different concrete mix or a different thickness?
Different thickness, different sub-base, the use of drain tile behind the curb line to make sure that the sub-drain, the sub-base is well drained and
Life cycle
protected.
cost is
That's
what
not
really
in
matters.
that is going above the minimum at this point?
It's something we cost out, though.
Sub-drain?
Yeah.
Because we're doing that at the
Airport.
Mulberry. I'll figure out where I live. Out on Mulberry, we're doing it's sub-drained out there, and I would assume that would be the minimum, but.
And it's somewhat dependent on the soil section, depending where you're at. If it's 100% sand and you have groundwater 20 feet down, you probably don't need it as much as.
Well, yeah, that's true. Okay.
Yep.
As Jim said, that the geotechnical analysis that we're doing will provide that kind of pavement cross section, and typically you're designing for a 20 to 30 year pavement design life.
How deep do you go?
That'll all be part of the geotechnical.
That
boring
which begs the question, how much more do we
that's what I
spend to
mean.
get a 30 to 40 year?
That can be part of the geotechnical analysis.
Bingo. That would be interesting to know. Life cycle cost.
So do you have enough information if you left 2 roundabouts out at this point and just not eliminated them, but just left those at alternatives?
Put a pause on them.
Then you could do the middle, and we could come back in a week and maybe, or whatever, and come up with some additional information.
Yes.
I don't want to put H&I on the spot to get a comment at all tonight.
And that's one of the things I didn't comment on. We have been working with H&I throughout the whole process. They've been involved with multiple meetings, and this is something that we would take back to them and discuss as well, and how that fits within their current plans. For construction, don't have a roundabout in the design because they're a year ahead of us in construction, if you will. But they were very receptive and encouraging for the potential for a roundabout. So
And they'd have to tear down a historic garage.
the northeast corner. Yes.
So if we had a roundabout in the downtown and then we had a sweep on the south side of town, that's acceptable potentially?
Certainly acceptable, yes.
Just blah, blah, blah.
I was going to say, surprisingly,
Not just me.
I was out anti-roundabout, but I can see a positive effect for the roundabout on Second Street and the sweep on
That's where I'm,
Carver
that's
corner.
where I'm landing right now.
Joe was pointing out to me that making a decision on the roundabout is important because that kind of starts the clock on the EA. And if we don't have a decision of investigate or not, if it gets pushed out a month or 6 months or 12 months, that's just pushing out the whole process for looking at that. So.
Greg, I think it would be really helpful if you could have for us next week or at your earliest convenience, better information on this environmental assessment options, costs, because I'm not sure I've got enough information to really understand what the options are. They don't seem like any good options.
It's the most, you build within the EA area, it's the most expensive part of the most expensive thing you can do.
It's the most expensive and the
construction
quickest.
standpoint.
And the quickest, that's true.
But if you, but then if you go try to build outside of that preferred EA,
Yeah.
there's just
Well,
additional expenses.
But isn't the sweep in the EA
No.
enough? Didn't you say it was
You said it
close
isn't.
enough?
The sweep does not impact historic structures like the roundabout does. So it would be revision to the MOU.
But it's not in the EA, no.
Right.
Part of it is, part of it is not.
Inflation thing can't go on forever.
And if the signalization is taken out, it perhaps would end up being the most cost-effective choice?
Potentially, yes.